That's true enough.
Oh, is this the same? Okay. Cool. Let's see that one. There's
It
a
doesn't, I don't think so. No, that's
Yep. I looked at last week's. It wasn't on there. Did I do it? Let's do it.
To make all those goals, we usually put aside $600,000 for firefighters arbitration. Just in case.
That's down though, the 700.
We still have fund
Oh,
balance, so we
we
can
do
do
that.
I already know that they're not going to carry figure arbitration.
Okay.
After.
After.
Even forward on the
Yeah, if Mr. Stewart comes out, they're going to really want more documentation. What is actually
We're stripping the
back
half.
to the contract. Just do it all on one.
So shall I start the meeting? Let's begin the meeting for MLD on behalf of Councillor McFarland. Call the meeting to order and ask for roll call, please.
Director Armstrong?
Here.
Director Kelly? Director Dowdle?
Here.
Director Ensel?
Here.
Director McFarland? Director Kretzer?
Here.
Director Reed?
Present.
Manager Tracy?
Here.
CFO Cookie? Here.
You do the readings of all these things? I don't know.
No, you do it. Resolved that the minutes of the meeting of the PMLD Board held on June 28, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the MLD office.
So moved.
Councillor Armstrong, second by Councillor Ensel. Discussion? Roll call?
Councillor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councillor Kelly? Oops, sorry. Councillor
Director.
Dowdle?
Yes.
Councillor Ensel?
yes.
Councillor Kretzer?
Yes.
Mayor Reed? Or Director Reed?
Just director right now, huh? I think you've been issued some materials with regard to the financial reports, and we can ask Ms. Cookie and Mr. Tracy to go over them with us.
Okay, it's this packet in front of you. The cover page is July 2018 year-to-date revenues as compared, there's 5 preceding years back to July of 2013. 2018 looks like a banner year of graphing, but there are over $1 million in the New York State recs and ZECs that are driving these numbers up. So our revenues and expenses are pretty consistent with 2014 and 2015, actually. The second page is the sales report, month-to-date and year-to-date dollars and usage quantities by category. Our revenues this year so far year-to-date are $14.3 million. Our expenses, $12.861, maybe in excess of $1.5 million that we have funded into our retirement reserves, debt reserves are paid to May of 2019, and depreciation reserve. We put everything into savings that we've paid. And we are still in austerity spending in the operating budget. And the only capital purchases we've made so far are some transformers that were budgeted and meters and our recent land purchase. And we're looking forward to the fall.
Terrific.
Thank you, CFO Cookie. Point of order, Director McFarland is now present. Sorry I was late. I blame the one-way roads. So resolved that the financial report as read is hereby ordered, received, and placed on file among the public records of the MLD office. Do I have a motion?
Here.
Director Kretzer, seconded by Director Dowdle. Any discussion on this point? All right, roll call. Director Armstrong.
Yes.
Director Kelly. He's not here. Director Daddle.
Yes.
Director Ansel.
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer.
Yes.
And Director Reed.
Yes.
That action is adopted. Three, we have departmental reports presented by MLD Manager William Tracy.
Okay, behind the minutes, I have a work in progress we've done, various things in the last couple of months. We were, of course, involved in the storm damage from May 4th windstorm. We repaired and replaced 3 streetlights that were damaged from motor vehicle accidents. We rebuilt several sections of pole line on Adams Street. We upgraded the electrical service for the Underwood Trailer Park, and currently we're working on to provide power out to the airport, to the where the multimodal facility is, and where the hotel will be located. They're inside the city jurisdiction, so we will supply the electricity to them. So our guys started this group working out there.
I might update for the council this time too. Not only are they tunneling underneath the right-of-way we're currently establishing out there to bring the power to the multimodal, but we're also bringing water and sewer with the same contractor at the same time to try to economize a little bit in the cost to the city. So we're fully servicing that lot that you described.
Yes, sir. IE projects, we've completed putting the heating and cooling mini splits downstairs to the finance office. CPPH is finishing up doing their outdoor parking lot. And we're just waiting for the results of the test on the window for City Hall. IEP will be providing $250,000 for work on that. I believe we have that. You also have a grant for another $300,000 on top.
And you said IEP was providing $250,000?
Yes. So when they decide, I've already talked to Mike Bissett, when they do decide how they're gonna do the windows, to write the contract, one contract for $250,000. And when he gets the bill for that, give it to me, and I will submit it in to the IEP for payment.
And then we have another grant for $300,000.
I believe we do, yes.
And will that cover, do you know, will that cover the entire cost of the project?
That
Not
I don't know.
quite, but
Should be close. I
Betty
think.
Little felt that she may be able to get us slightly more than $300,000 if there's a little bit of a difference. So I'm pretty hopeful we can get them all covered.
Very nice. Anything else more on the IEP program?
Nope, that's about it. A hydro contract, final comments from the NUA have gone to the other union association. They're looking those over, and then they will forward everything on to the Power Authority. We're hoping that we're wrapping this thing up with the lawyers, and we'll get the assignment portion hopefully this fall. And it would extend the contract from, which is currently set to expire in 2025 to 2040.
And then with the same amount of electricity being provided to the
Yes,
city?
the numbers will change on that.
It's just an extension on all the
It's just an
one
extension,
terms?
continues the contract on for another 15 years.
Very nice. Any other departmental reports?
Yeah, I got a phone call this morning. For the last, you may know or not know, for the last 2 months, we've been under audit from NERC, and we've been submitting documentation to them back and forth. What NERC is looking at is our relationship to the transmission lines and so forth, the bulk storage systems and so forth. Of the 4 munis in NUA, 2 of them started a month before us. We're the first one completed. We're supposed to have the the call out, I guess you call it, at the end there, sometime next week. We finished the last questionnaire with them over 2 weeks ago and didn't hear back from them. And finally, we got a notice yesterday that we answered all their questions there, but they apparently seem to be happy. So we're expecting a good report out of them. So we should hear sometime next week. And that's all I have.
All right, perfect, thank you, Mr. Tracy. Moving on to number 4, which are the monthly write-offs. 4A, we have resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to write off unpaid final bills from July 2017 in the amount of $4,974.76. The percentage of write-offs for this period is 0.53%. 4B, we have resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to write off unpaid final bills from August 2017 in the total amount of $2,591.30. The percentage of write-offs for this period is 0.23%. 4C, resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to write off unpaid final bills from September 2017 in the total amount of $2,315.68. The percentage of write-offs for this period is 0.21%. 4D, resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to write off unpaid final bills from October 2017 in the total amount of $2,359.35. The percentage of write-offs for this period is 0.22%. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
Director Kretzer, in a second?
Sure.
Director Dowdle, any discussion on these points?
These write-off percentages are very good, very strong. Thank you. Requires, I know, a lot of diligence to make sure you're tracking and staying on top of these sorts of
And
things.
even though we do these write-offs because we're required to under state law, but these bills do stay on our computer system. And every once in a while, the people who have defaulted here default out in nicer territory and drift back in here for our service, and we tend to catch them at that point and they get their bills sorted out. Sometimes a few years later, but we eventually, not everybody, but we do catch up with some of them.
And is there interest calculated on those?
Yes, there's interest on it.
What is the percentage of interest?
On judgments, it's 9%.
Of course. And do we have any idea of why on July 2017 was about twice as high as the other months in this period? Any guesses?
Yeah, probably the combination probably of a lot of heat residents that they owe money, their electric heat that they get during the wintertime has expired out, and they've got their bill over, and sometimes they're not willing to pay. What they do, they disappear and move out somewhere else. And then you have, in some cases, college students. But we've been trying to keep after them by getting their IDs where they live before they came to college. And we send a letter, sometimes we do get responses from the parents at home that do close out these bills.
And it helps a lot that we take credit cards now because parents will file in payments to take care of the kids' debt.
Well, very good, and I agree with the mayor. That's a very good percentage, I think, of write-offs. And any further discussion on these points? With no further discussion, we'll move to roll call. Director Armstrong.
Yes.
Director Kelly is absent. Director Dowdle.
Yes.
Director Ensel.
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer.
Yes.
And Director Reed.
Yes.
Those resolutions are adopted. Moving on to item number 5, which is entitled Other Items. 5A, resolved. In accordance with the request, the MLD Board authorizes Mayor Reed to sign the ADA contract for preliminary AE services for the MLD compound NTE $25,000.00, including a $1,000 deposit paid to AEDE. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Director Kretzer, seconded.
Second.
Director Armstrong. Any discussion on this point?
So that can be your new official name, the MLD compound?
Well, let's all go with something better. That's for the time being, I guess.
Maybe we can have a kids naming contest for you all.
Yeah, I can do that too.
I think it has a nice ring to it. And what exactly are the services that are going to be provided by AEDA?
They're looking at the preliminary services, get all our requirements together, start looking at a schedule for getting things done, preliminary cost estimate, looking to see what they will need for zoning and planning boards, so forth.
And were any other contractors pursued other than AEDA?
We had 3 of them give us proposals. We selected this one because of their prices were a little bit lower, and they had to seem to have more experience in what we were looking for in the designing our garage area and so forth.
Perfect. And is there any further discussion on this plan?
Will this be for the entire parcel that's been purchased?
Yeah, this will be for this, out of that entire parcel, MLD is only using 10 acres. 6 acres for our compound, and then 4 acres for a future substation to go there. The rest of it is for development.
Okay. And water and sewage is,
Right now, water and sewage is town,
okay. Is
Is
it there?
what?
is town.
Town.
I can't vouch for how good it is because water and sewer goes to the compost plant
Right.
down there. The lines will probably have to be increased to service us, I guess, but I won't know that for sure. That's one of the things the AE firm has to look into. Electricity, we will be extending our own lines down there to feed us. Under my tariff, or Plattsburgh tariff, I can feed a site outside the city limits as long as it's owned and operated by the city.
Okay.
Now, is 10 acres, that's about the same size as the,
6 acres is about the same size as what I got down there. The other 4 is for a new substation. If we put industrial tenants out there, we're gonna need more power out there to support them in the future.
perfect. And the lot that was purchased was about 42 acres.
42 acres.
All right.
So that leaves 32 acres for development along with the rest of that acreage out there.
Any further discussion?
Should the annexation occur and it becomes, would we then, the city, be putting water and sewage to you, to the property? If,
That's a question for Bear, but I would guess so.
you know, I don't know if your timeline, would you be there before that's resolved, or are you waiting, or?
I will probably be there before that's
Okay.
resolved. Hopefully it's resolved quick, but
Right.
I can't say whether it will be or won't be.
And the findings of AE Services may, hopefully it'll give the go-ahead to develop that property as planned, correct? I mean, that's what we're hoping for. Well, the property that was purchased, could they find something with the property that says it can't be developed as proposed?
No, the section of property where we're going on has already been zoned for industrial
Okay.
by the town.
What is your timeline for over there of getting it set up?
We're hoping to be over there by end of next year, late fall next year, mainly because the city has a grant to demolish Green Street. So we need to get the new construction done, started, and get it underway as quickly as possible, and start moving things over there so that demolition work can occur.
Any interest in activity on the other building?
I was about to ask that. Under
Well,
old business.
let's get the,
Well,
why don't we wait till
okay.
old business on
Oh.
that? Is there any other discussion
just
on
gonna be for it.
item 5A? Hearing no discussion, we'll send it to roll call. Director Armstrong,
Yes.
Director Dowdle,
Yes.
Director Ensel,
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes, Director Kretzer.
Yes.
And Director Reed.
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Moving on to number 6, old business.
Actually, I was gonna ask the question that Director Director Dowdle asked, but prior to that, Bill, I was gonna ask you, I was looking at the temperatures, the calendar that you gave us for July and August, and obviously the daily temperatures were higher than normal. How did that impact our usage for basically July and August? I know July was.
It went up maybe 2 or 3 megawatts, about it. Typically, in the summertime, the city uses around 55 megawatts. We were using, I think in June, we might have used 60 megawatts. I haven't seen the July bill yet, but it's probably around the same area. It's nothing like the winter time.
I know they said that August was really.
Yeah, but we don't have to buy supplemental power. So unless there's a problem at Niagara, there's a.
But it was a higher than average usage, you would say, for the summer?
Yes, it was probably 4 or 5 megawatts higher. But like I said, we were within our hydro allotment, and we didn't have to purchase any supplemental. And yeah, you'll have to also figure you have Bitcoin in there too. They're running about all the Bitcoins that I know of, the large ones, they're running about 11.5 megawatts. So if you take them out of the equation, it was probably around 50 megawatts for the city, which is basically what Summit typically has been in the past.
What was your quota this summer? Do you know what the quota level was for the summer?
Well, it can be up to 105. But
Sometimes it goes low in the summer for
yeah,
me.
it goes low in the summer. The summer, we are usually down around 55 megawatts, thereabouts. Which, it was from Plattsburgh's not a big air conditioning load up here. The slight increases I do see, like in some customers, is like commercial organizations, and SUNY it goes up slightly, but they're all dropping back down once, especially today, when it'll be so cool. Summer has never been a problem for us. It is a problem for investor-owned utilities because that's when they peak, and their equipment's running extremely hot. For us, it's better it's running in the wintertime hot when it's cold outside, because it helps the equipment along by taking a lot of the heat away.
And then just to follow up on Director Dowdell's question on.
Well, right now,
progress on
we're still working to resolve the issues with the deeds and get them cleaned up. We have to go before zoning and planning to get the deeds sorted out for that site. Once we get the deeds sorted out, then I can start marketing it. But right now, that's what we're working on. They're supposed to be, both of them, the issues that's supposed to be on the planning and zoning board for September. The decisions.
Thank you.
And point of order, it should be noted that Director Kelly has joined us.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I apologize for being late.
Not a problem. And is there any other old business to discuss? Then moving on, we shall move to new business. Is there any new business that any director would like to bring? I have a question. In light of the fact that quotas, we were hitting the quota a lot last winter, do you know of any pushes by any businesses or to switch from electric heat to other forms of heat?
No.
And
The only people that in the commercial world don't use electric heat, Kenny Drugs, for example, even though electric heat would be cheaper for them, they do not use it because they want to keep all their stores the same. So they look at their revenue of the stores and bring in the cost. They're looking at apples and apples versus apples and oranges. There's other companies that are the same, like Applebee's is the same thing. They build everything the same way. They don't get any discounts or anything. Because when you look at the results, you want to be looking at apples and apples, not apples and oranges. So.
And
other than their individual outfits, they all go electric heat.
And what about the new Zukowski properties going in down their Skyway? Because I know they can get or I imagine they can be hooked up to the natural gas grid. Do you know if they're being hooked up for natural gassy or for electric?
The ones on Route 9.
On Route
Oh, you're
9.
talking Route 9.
Yes,
Across
As
from
far as
Lake
I know,
Forest.
he's doing electric heat.
really. And, interesting. Has anyone expressed concern regarding last year's about there being enough, about going forward with electric heat in light of the fact that we hit the quota?
Just about, with a few exceptions, every year we go over. Last year, we went over more because of the Bitcoin business, but we tend to go over in the wintertime because residential usually jumps from 7 million kilowatt hours a month in the summertime to 30 million or higher, depending how cold it is. If it's a mild winter, we have had in the recent years stayed under our quota. But if the cold, extreme winter like last year, like we had at the end of December, going into January, electric jumps sky high at that point. And usage goes rocketing up.
Now, I know you said before that the city, or private people within the city, they're allowed to set up solar panels on their house, but they're not allowed to connect and sell back to the
Yeah,
grid.
we don't, yeah. The law only applies to investor-owned utilities. And in fact, they have to sign a 35, 40-page document with the state in order to do that.
And that's controlled by the state that.
That's controlled by the state.
Does that preclude us from choosing to offer that option if somebody wanted to install, even though
If
the
they want to
economics aren't
install,
sound?
if they want to install, they can install them. I can't stop them from installing.
But there's no technical reason why we couldn't allow them to net meter, is there?
Yes, because somebody else in the city is then gonna have to pay for their services.
We, actually, I think, wasn't it more than a year ago, we had a resident come to us and lodge kind of a complaint about that because they had a number of panels on their house and they had quite a bit of reserve electricity and they couldn't sell it back.
No municipal in the state of New York.
Right, no, I think it was someone down in my ward.
I haven't heard about that one.
Yeah, they were here probably about a year and a half or so ago.
But New York State is revamping everything because they realize net metering discriminates. So only rich people can afford to put stuff on their houses, and then the poor ratepayers are having to subsidize the richer ones that can afford it. They're revitalizing it. I don't think it's gonna be worth what it's gonna be in the end, like it was in the beginning. Plus, in the city, to get a payback, even if we did do net metering, you're talking about 45 years to get the payback. Your solar cells will only last 20, 25 years. Your inverter only lasts 12 years. So you can put it on your roof, but you'll never break even with it, unfortunately. Now, outside the city, and with the investor owns, because they charge a lot more for electricity, yes, you'll get a payback within 10, 15 years or more, depending how much they charge.
Now, if the annexation goes through, and I believe there's 250 acres or 230 acres about over there, at the current energy mix of the city, if that gets industrialized, do you think the city will be able to provide power to that entire area and remain under the quota in the summer months?
Depends what goes in there.
Any other new business? Hearing none, moving on to number 8. This is the time where any persons, any members of the public can address the board if they so wish.
Hello.
Hello.
I am Marianne Shaughnessy. I came, and this is Patrick Shaughnessy, my husband. We came last month for I believe this was public safety common council meeting. And I just wanted to come back again. I was here to address the unpermitted wall that was put up bordering our back property line. We did attend the planning board meeting this past Monday, and it will be continued to next month. It needs to go to the county planning board
Just a quick question.
first, yes.
Sorry, does this have to do with the municipal lighting
Yes,
department?
it does, yep.
Okay, fantastic.
It went to the planning board, it has to go to the county planning board, and then back to the planning board. At the planning board this past Monday, though, it was brought up by another concerned neighbor that this wall was actually put on an easement, a right-of-way, from the, I have a picture here, from the electrical pole down to the electrical box on the other end. It goes right along, it's actually right on top of the easement. And that is a concern to me. There's a stop work order on the wall right now. So if there were an issue with the electrical lines underneath, there's a stop work order until at least the next planning board meeting a month from now. I don't know how this is going to be addressed. If I did call today and I was told about the plan that the builder plans to do to find his way around doing unpermitted work. He, I guess, may be approved by MLD. I'm not quite sure if you can clarify that this is completely accurate.
I got drawings from the planning board, and I've already signed off on them. It doesn't impact our system. We're fine with it.
Yeah, there was no comment at the planning board from MLD. And I guess instead of making him remove the unpermitted wall, they're just going to allow him to do a conduit along his side. I guess it'll run all along his side and then connect to both. But when I asked on the phone today, I said, you know, in the meantime, if something goes wrong, then what happens? And they said, you know, we'll dig up the blocks and we'll fix it, and then we'll fix this property. And I said, okay, so if these blocks weren't there and I had my own shrubs, trees right there on top of it, and it had to be dug up, then I would then be responsible to pay for it. And who I spoke to said, no, if we destroy your shrubs and trees, you can go to the nursery, you can pick out whatever you want, and we'll reimburse you and do it for you. But I don't know how comfortable I am as a taxpayer knowing that this wall doesn't have to be there. It was put in unpermitted, and if it's removed or his land is disrupted, then the taxpayers are now paying for whatever was there to be put back in place. And I don't know if, I don't know, that's my concerns. I didn't realize the first time it was put on a right-of-way, or else I would have brought that up at the last meeting, but since I saw it was municipal lighting department tonight, I wanted to bring that up and share my concerns on record and make it known.
Ms. Shaughnessy, where's this wall?
My property is 4 Spring Circle. It is bordering our backyard it is the property of 3 Circle Grove.
And what's the purpose of the wall, do you know?
There really is no
Great
purpose.
question.
It's actually to to raise his lawn.
To extend his lawn. In all of his plans, he had an earth embankment. He did this unpermitted. It's really, there's no need for a wall. And I don't realize or understand why it would even be allowed to stay there if there's no real purpose whatsoever for it, and it's in a right-of-way. And I just want to make sure that if the standard is that a right-of-way anywhere in the city can be covered up by concrete blocks for whatever reason unpermitted,
There's no sense.
Then I
And
guess
it was constructed without permit.
Built and no one. He just went in, put them in.
he actually had a meeting with a code enforcement officer, his engineer, talked about the earth embankment that's going there, spoke nothing of a wall, there was no wall whatsoever, and he either left the meeting and gave permission to his workers to put it in, or it was being put in at the same time that meeting was happening. And he knew what was going on and didn't share that with the building inspector's office.
It seems to be a case of, let's put it in and make them tell us we have to take it out, rather than getting approval before we put it in.
And this is just one of the, I guess, many things that we've done that way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
And Mr. Tracy, you said as far as MLD is concerned,
That's a code enforcement issue. We need to take it downstairs to show it back. We're not code enforcers.
okay.
And the drawings I saw were sent to me by the planning board, or the zoning board, I should say. And those are the ones I approved.
Okay. And are there any other members of the public that would like to address the MLD board today?
I just have a question. It was the plans that were submitted for the zoning board that were approved? That has your, the municipal lighting plan in it? Like that the conduit is right there?
The conduit was something he offered. I didn't require it. I was happy with what he has there. I have no problem with it.
You're happy with the right-of-way under the ground with the concrete blocks right on top of it?
I don't see that as a problem.
Because if something happens,
I have right-of-ways throughout the city where we have cedar hedges, fences, sheds, et cetera, built into them. I cannot keep a right-of-way clear. And I don't have that authority, I don't have that law.
So we might as well just take the right of ways out of the.
I know, what is
The
the
right-of-way,
right-of-way?
the only thing a right-of-way gives me is a right to go across that property. That is all it is. The property still belongs to the homeowner, and it's up for the homeowner to do what he wishes with his property.
So
Okay.
it seems like a code enforcement issue that should be brought up.
Yeah,
But it
I
seems
have
that
nothing to do with that.
they have the right of way, but it doesn't seem like they really care what goes on top of the right of way.
I have no way of enforcing that. The property still belongs to the owner. It doesn't belong to me. I can't make any judgments under that. And I can go any right away in this city, it's the same thing. So the blocks I have no problem with because we can work around them. We work around that kind of stuff all the time around here.
Well, it seems clear to me that your end of this problem is explained very well, and I don't hold you accountable for anything, but we perhaps could make at a future time inquiries into this problem with the building inspector's office. So.
Can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
Who, I guess, would be responsible for what's been dug up then? Would it be whoever put something there, or is it, I can put whatever I want there, and whatever I have there that's destroyed will be covered by the taxpayers?
We mean in case of the lighting lines?
Or, I mean, the lighting lines are right under the wall, so, but if I decide to put in.
If they decide to put shrubbery or whatever in front of a wall on their side of the property, and if something happens, if that has to be dug up,
Right.
then
That
the
would be
city,
dug-
the
that-
city,
that
the
would
city
be dug
would
up
be
by us.
responsible
And
for.
I have that responsibility all over the city.
Yeah,
And
but,
I think that's what her question was.
So-
yeah,
as
and
far
and
as-
a lot of
to your
taxpayers would
point,
be
Mr.
mad to hear
Shaughnessy,
that.
what's the point?
First of all, I don't work with tax-paying money, so. Sorry, I work with electric rates.
And just,
Yeah, so their account is completely separate
From taxpayers.
Okay.
It's the tax paying.
But that is the part of doing business in the city where electrical systems were put in decades ago in backyards. It's a fact of life. We have to live with it, we have to deal with it.
okay. I just wanted to put it on record, my concerns.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Shaughnessy.
Thank you.
And anyone else from the public would like to address the MLD board? Hearing none, we will now entertain any motions to adjourn.
So moved.
Director Kretzer, any second? Director Dowdle? Roll call. Director Armstrong?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Dowdle?
Yes.
Director Ansel?
Yes.
Director McFarland? Yes. Director Kretzer?
Yes.
Director Reed?
Yes.
And hereby at about 5:04, the meeting is adjourned.
Let's begin the work session for tonight's Common Council. Give us an opportunity to discuss at further length anything in the agenda tonight, and also affords us the time to go into any executive councils you may feel necessary.
There was the potential acquisition of a property rights.
Does somebody want to?
Yeah, I'll move to go into executive session to discuss potential acquisition of property.
Property right, and second by Councilor Kelly, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
These other ones in there?
Okay. Because it's over a certain amount.
This arm's a little less sore.
Yeah.
It's slowly.
Wow.
I don't know what,
Yeah.
I have a feeling it might be already maxed out for what's there. I mean, are they taking it down the length of the new length or?
That intersection by military
I'll turn them over to you.
No, further up.
I didn't see it.
I'm surprised. Because I don't know the troopers.
State police.
Being the worst of it. They gotta rebuild.
Yeah, but I'm.
The question is, how, what are they rebuilding it to?
It was like, oh, you're gonna be so sore. And that's what it started. Sunday. And I get up on
Oh,
Sunday,
these,
and it's
they
like,
put these extra lights in, who's responsible for that?
it's not that bad. You know, doing stuff and.
Yeah.
He was not here tonight. That's who's responsible.
Icing doesn't matter. And then today, yesterday, at work, you know, so all my life.
Well, I got the whole one before us. So it's like, okay, I didn't have any problems with it. But I didn't know he built it before. So, but still, I have to know. I don't.
Is it better part of town? Yeah.
Same situation.
What did the zone? It's still in the zoning.
Yeah, look at that. That's probably completely on.
Bright sunshine.
Yeah, it was, soccer when I was younger, and then baseball, basketball. Yep.
Did they take you to the hospital?
Yeah.
3 feet short of there, battlefield. And then, another year, we're also that one.
They took me up there and kind of, you know.
Trash is still in there over the years, and they want me to clean it out. I only have right away. I don't own the property.
That's
I was, just, they were like,
Really?
sometime between 2001 and 2007, I can't give you an exact date. I just said somewhere in that range. That's what they say. Well, you're doing I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see how many thousands of dollars the technician is gonna.
Yeah, they told me a couple weeks ago, I just haven't been able to.
Oh, probably.
I'm assuming I left for a period of time.
Have a block.
That's cool.
Waiting.
Just to experience and
Take a look.
Yeah.
Sorry, question. Sorry. Or yeah, or yeah. Right here. This is the one who spoke before.
He has to be on the board.
Okay.
Only
So my meeting minutes are different. My minutes will start with this.
Okay. Perfect.
We're not too familiar with that.
Well, the planning board submitted, took documents and things, I don't know if you want to take sure of this wall for your minutes, but it'll all be on there.
I just make mention, you mentioned it. But as far as I'm concerned, I have no, so I have, by the law, I have no enforcement.
Right, no, I understand that, I just wanna make sure that it's on record. And in the minutes, if it says Mrs. Mary Ann Shaughnessy concerned about whatever, that's fine,
You said it, I didn't.
No, I know, I'm just like, that's even.
No, it doesn't have to.
All of these does is be a right property for property. And then what she said, I was working, did the approve. But they still own the property. They're still supposed to be scanning that property. After my mother's ground or overhead. It's the grass. I take the stuff down. Put my back, yes. Whichever is the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I know, but I wanna know exactly.
It's part of doing business. If I had my way, in the 1950s, they laid down a lot of utilities, I wouldn't have to build a backyard. Out in the front of the house. Or if they were going to the backyard, they built them like they did in LA, where there's a roadway that goes down the middle. So you get access. But that's, people at that time didn't think about that.
I thought this was like, you have to stairs or like 5 feet this way, 5 feet this way.
They do if they have to, they put something in the air, like a swimming pool, they have to stay 10 feet.
Yeah, I know. There's glass doors.
10 feet away from the ground.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's the big wall and the wall.
Well, we've had people put power lines.
Not ideal.
But they're supposed to get a permit in order to do that. People don't. We catch them and they get all something out of their pool. But if they put our lights down in the pool, wherever the pool is down here, it's illegal.
People trying to build it out of the power line.
Yes. You won't be surprised. Yeah, I know, you'd be surprised what some people will do.
He's such a party pooper.
Yeah, I try to keep people from stealing. Well,
They're gonna be dead.
they're gonna be dead, yeah.
Well, the thing is.
I've had people trying to build second deck porches where they get rid of the ground.
One of my kids had a guy who's coming to the intersection, somebody was stop sign kind of really fast. I'm like, slow. He's like, I have to do it. Yeah, but if they want to stop sign, I have a bad accident too.
Yeah, they Yeah, I had somebody run that thing to me on, Olivet. They were going off Olivet, they had a stop sign, I was coming down, like shooting there, Park Avenue. I was coming down there, didn't stop, ran right through, I just barely missed them.
I know.
Never underestimate
Yeah, also there, I try to figure out how many text and drive simultaneously. I sit at a desk and I can't even text. They were both trying to drive a car and text.
Yeah, you use the speech to text recognition anymore. That's getting really accurate.
It's just,
It was
I
a
mean, with
one-sided
multiple
thing.
one,
We'll
The guy
only
who's-
disregard all the other things.
Had to be at least 25 words in half an hour. What about?
That last one you said, I just sat there and laughed out
Not a recent
Are you done yet?
No, it was a few weeks ago.
Don't engage.
But it was.
How close are you to finishing?
Joe has.
What?
I saw it like.
You guys working? That took 2 hours to figure it out now.
If I describe it to you.
It should be $5 grand or 10 grand.
Well, he was working with his Ouija board. Yeah, listen to what Ouija board. So when is it gonna be locked out?
Unfortunately, I looked into the
Oh, you're finished.
The problem.
It was the kind of engagement that I was at.
You get back on that.
No, man, you're going.
Cool.
And your numbers in mind?
Come on.
He don't have a
It's
justify.
not.
He doesn't have to testify of that.
Everybody's phone.
Yeah, and I remember this.
Why is that?
We did a press conference immediately after getting us.
Family stuff for every year.
I thought it was voice over IP, we were some of the,
And seven
Yeah,
minutes later,
$98,000.
Senator Moore asked him a question, he said, oh, I haven't read this letter yet.
In July.
You remember that?
Well, it was like yesterday with McCanley, you know, the attorney.
Yeah.
And he said, he's a representative. I asked Richard, one of the items. Ran a series of, you know, people have been leaving this administration since like.
She must get in trouble with the
And it's
DRC.
comments on people leaving. Oh, he's right. Talking about. Oh, he's a
We
great.
had it in the right place to begin with.
Noting that
But now
everybody.
we changed it, it's coming in. Phone bill.
What happened to the
I don't have a choice.
He offers this money.
It's 170%.
It's like less than 3 days.
Consolidated.
It's all streaming somehow.
Good question.
You can
What are they managing?
Just gives us more broadband.
I know, I'm sorry.
Gives more notice. Gives us more usage. Don't have that.
Oh,
But
well,
it
you
doesn't
already
give us
saw that.
maintenance, so
Gives more connections to the internet. No, we already have that.
So who's responsible for maintenance?
Chad, Carl.
Chad and Carl's already.
Wednesday, actually.
Oh, yeah, no.
Twin State is usually $165, just to shake hands.
These are represented.
The Twin State.
Yeah, Twin State.
So Joe, for us, 5 or 10?
He has a horse.
I was
gonna say, did you get one yet?
Severely.
I think earlier in the summer, wrestling was $3.
He won 10.
That you have all those gigabytes. He told me he got that at the wrestling, the head.
Yeah, so the first 5.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, pick 10.
So you bought a horse for him, you got it. Yeah, but that's fine. Okay.
Not here, no.
That's gonna throw me out.
he's gotta put up all the money, so.
Unless you,
Why is that?
unless you have a business up and running.
Oh. But what if you're not running it as a business, you're just putting, you just keeping one or two horses down there for family riding?
Yeah, if you wanna get financing, that's the difference of the house housing. And higher interest rates, starting to go.
Was it agriculture?
Look at house. This guy bought it from.
Being very generous with your life. Thank you. What's the executive session about?
Oh, no. Potential property acquisition.
I almost bought it.
Good.
The only problem was.
Would you like that last couple of emails? That whole email string I was sending out? Did you get it? Stop emailing, get more done.
Oh, it was on River Road, it was just right there at the beginning of River Road.
Didn't make,
That house was.
didn't make a dent? Yeah, didn't make a dent, right in the door. It's like,
Slopes down.
it's sweet. You have to go to the inside.
Lower area, and that's
Right.
where the.
Six of them, already billed for that, right? Yeah, we can do that Monday. I said, no.
Well,
It's Thursday.
I didn't like it.
I wish I could cut it tomorrow, can't be first, right? Oh, I guess you gotta go.
That was
There's some days I gotta finish this.
late 1990s. Yeah, I guess it was 20 years. Problem was, pool in the front porch, right side of the road. Plus the other problem was, one of the second floors in the basement.
Can't afford something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be a problem.
So, part of the ground floor was sagging.
Checks tomorrow, because she's
And in order to
she said
fix
Screen
it,
Theater won't
we
do
were
anything
gonna have
for
to
it
go
until
to
she gives me money.
the,
So remember that next time they come,
I would cutting floor and have them view another beam put in there. And they weren't quite sure how you get into the basement.
Line up.
All I have is this, but let's see if he has.
okay, look at it tomorrow. Perfect.
So this thing,
So we've got 60 seconds for further discussion on any items in work session, which is returning from executive session to discuss a matter of real property rights, and no decisions were made.
I can give our MLD report.
Sure, go ahead.
We just had our MLD meeting for the month. Took place immediately before this council session, where we discussed delinquent bills and their write-offs and we did have some input from the public, which was a nice change of events. And other than that,
How they feel.
no further updates.
And you have a number of items on the agenda here, so.
Yes.
I'm sure. Okay, good. Thank you. Let's convene the meeting for the Common Council tonight and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Dowdle?
Here.
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Present.
Counselor Ketzer?
Here.
Just a couple of items. I think I might have mentioned last week, but we're certainly grateful for Clinton County Soil and Water Group that helped get rid of about 1,000 tires that were in Matt Miller's beach area. DPW helped do that, so it's just one more example of shared services and how we appreciate the work of the county in working with us. I promised you a budget by the end of the month. Fortunately, Chamberlain Marks pointed out to me that tomorrow's the end of the month, so it bought us just a tiny bit more time, badly needed time, because we're right to the wire and putting it out. We've got a lot of the basic calculations all done. Chamberlain Marks is just doing the due diligence and the verbiage for the actual budget package that you see, and you'll have that for your due consideration as soon as 2:30 tomorrow. So we've called a press conference at that time. You'll be happy to note that as you know, you gave us 4 different targets. A property tax increase target that would stay below the rate of inflation, revenue target, an expense target, and fund balance, improvement in the fund balance target. We stayed within the property tax below the rate of inflation. We hope and expect to exceed revenues in our budget, to be lower than the expense ceiling that you gave us. We came in better there as well, and as a consequence, we believe we're creating a larger than anticipated or designed contribution to the fund balance, seeing an improvement in the fund balance. And as you know, we've been tracking this all very carefully at the beginning of each month, and looking at the month totals that Chamberlain Marks provides us, and we've been tracking quite well in 2018 as well. So hopefully at the end of the year we'll have established a bit of a fund balance as well, which is I'm grateful for that. Tomorrow I'll also discuss, we believe that the state will finalize their fiscal score for the city of Plattsburgh tomorrow. The Comptroller's Office is finalizing on October or August 31st. We know what that score is. We expect, and we fully expect it to be moved into the moderate fiscal stress category based on, not on our 2018 results, this is still looking at 2017 data. So it's no big surprise to us, but we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow as well. I'm confident that we're starting to turn things around, so even though we knew this was coming and it's not great news, I think there's a plan, and we are making really good progress thanks to a lot of your hard work and our willingness to make some really, really difficult decisions. And we'll also talk about where our city fits into comparable cities in the state with regard to our level of property taxes and the tax burden per capita and per household on our residents in the city of Plattsburgh too. So we'll have a lot to report at that press conference. So you all have the month of August or longer to go through your various committees, meet with the various departments, and discuss the budget in either the consolidated group committee meetings and of course the finance committee meetings as well. So take as long as you need. We've got plenty of time, but it'll be ready for you as of 2:30 tomorrow. That's all I have to report.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on August 27, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer and second by Councilor Ansel. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passed. Okay.
Resolved the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on August 23, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Presumably still moved by Councilors Kretzer and Ansel. And presumably no more discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending August 29, 2018 in the amount of $465,592.19 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city Chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Ansel. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You have your reports in your packet. Are there any other additional reports? Let's please begin with governance strategy and city operations. Councilor Kretzer.
So the survey regarding the proposed ban on plastic straws and other plastic items is on the city website for residents and taxpayers and food vendors to review. That input will be used to help the council to formulate a decision regarding this proposed ban. It was, I believe it's been extended to September 30th, so it'll be on the city website. It's on the first page on the home page. It takes probably 2 minutes to complete, and that data will be used to help us make a most informed decision. So I guess just encourage everyone who's concerned to go and make sure their voice is heard. Councilor Armstrong?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I had told you last week that I had sent out what this working group of stakeholders had identified as problems regarding free roaming and feral cats. And I believe I told you that the stakeholders included members of the Trap, Neuter, and Release group headed by Lil Cassidy, Eric Eaglefeather, Rebecca King, Councilor Ensel and I, and Denise Nephew. Anyway, after a lengthy discussion, and I sent this out so that they could give me feedback regarding whether we agree that there was consensus indeed, at least on the nature of the problem. So I'm going to share that with you. I sent it all to you in email, but I think this was kind of a really significant and almost revolutionary meeting, because we had people from very distinct perspectives come together and at least agree that the nature of the problem that
A spirited meeting.
yes, a spirited debate that these animals do present to our community. We had animal advocates who, are very concerned about the health and safety of these animals, but they could at least concede that there were certain problems that we had to solve as a community. So they are free roaming, abandoned, and or feral cats are not the problem, but rather the result of irresponsible pet owners' behaviors. The unmonitored feeding of free roaming and feral cats potentially attracts wild animals such as skunks and raccoons. Free roaming cats potentially pose community health risks, because they may carry diseases that can be transmitted to humans through their feces, bites, or scratches. Roaming cats and feral cats sometimes damage property when they urinate and or defecate on neighboring properties. Free roaming cats potentially threaten wild bird populations. Well, the reason why this is such an important development in the process is that we have now a clear set of problems to try to address through our legislation. And I'm going to work with Councilor Ensel. We talked about a variety of solutions that could address the problems, such as cat licensing, microchipping, feline leash laws, among them.
And actually, along those lines, today I came across an article that there's actually a small village in New Zealand that is considering very similar licensing, microchipping, and so on. They're taking it a little bit further than I think we will, and that is when a feline passes away, that the owner will not be able to replace the cat. That they want to ban cats altogether. We're certainly not going that far. But what it does point out is that according to the article, it says that there is a very high risk to the public for disease, as well as to the natural habitat with birds and so on. And there's one piece here, and I'm looking at the piece here to try to find it, that feral cats are one of the 60th, in the top 60, one of the top 60 threats to the world as far as wildlife.
And habitat.
Yeah. So I think that I agree with Councilor Armstrong in that we made a considerable amount of progress and headway. And I look forward to working with her and drafting a piece of legislation soon.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that this article, some of the commentators, some of the people that they were interviewed were saying that you would never think of letting dogs run free.
Exactly.
Why do we let cats run free?
Right. Thanks.
Thank you. City Infrastructure, Council Ransel?
Yes, very quickly, work wrapped up on South Peru Street. There has been some initial work on Veterans Lane, but it's been kind of put aside for now because DPW is kind of fully involved with the Battle of Plattsburgh. It's all hands on deck at that point, so immediately after the Battle of Plattsburgh, I think the work will take place on Veterans Lane, and it will run the entire length of Veterans Lane. And hopefully after that, we will begin tackling Cornelia Street.
They expect
Funding
to go
contingent.
to Veterans Lane on September 10th, and as you know, it's very innovative for us to, first of all, do in-house the road building we've been seeing this summer. On Veterans Lane, they're going to do something more innovative again. They're going to go down to the subsurface and go deeper with soil and gravel work and put down a special
some kind of mat.
for better drainage. As you know, it's susceptible drainage problems in that area, so they're even expanding their repertoire farther in this. And they've also, I should let you know, they've begun surveying the areas of Cornelia Street that they would like to do this year. They only got a few more hours of survey work remaining to do on that.
A quick question, and I know Mike and Mike aren't here, but I came across it today, and I don't know, Mayor, if you're aware of it or know about it, but on Upper Cornelia, almost at just below the intersection of Broad and Cornelia, almost right across from the Kinney Drugs on Cornelia Street, there's a sewer that is coned off, and it's causing a traffic situation.
Not a good location, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have any idea of when that may be remedied.
I don't know the timeline for that.
Is there
Anything
any
else
way,
from
and I guess along those lines, and I don't know, Chief Ritter, if we could do that, if there's any way to kind of block that off so it doesn't, you don't have the two lanes in front of the Kinneys and the Stewarts, so that traffic coming down Cornelia eastbound can go around, and it's because it's causing a lot of congestion at the light because cars are unable to, eastbound cars are unable to go around because there's a lineup of cars between Prospect and the intersection of Cornelia and Broad. I don't know if there's a way that we can kind of make it so that at least one lane can flow each way around that.
I mean, not
Storm
knowing
sewer.
what DPW's intentions are and what they currently are doing, I would certainly defer to them. We can look into it, but it's really up to them.
Okay.
Well, are you concerned about safety?
Well, I am, because I did see cars coming in and they're darting out and around to get around the cones that are set up there coming into the westbound lanes.
So maybe we can just have that conversation between the police department and DPW about possible ways to ease that congestion.
Sure, I wasn't aware of it until
Okay.
you mentioned it right now.
I just noticed it this afternoon. Thank you.
Finance and Budget, Councilor Kelly?
Just one thing, I had the pleasure of sitting in on a budget discussion with the public safety group on Tuesday. And it was really enlightening. I saw a group of department heads who are trying to help each other and who are coming up with some really creative ideas to reduce expenses and increase revenue. One particularly exciting piece of news was that the fire department looks to be increasing revenue even more than we first expected with the ambulance service, and that transition into a new way of doing that has gone extremely well. And Scott Lawless, I wish he were here so we could compliment him, but he has done a tremendous job with that. And of course, his offer is, well, if we can use that revenue to help the city in some other way, then we will. And I like the spirit of that. I like the willingness on each department head's part, including Chief Ritter and Joe McMahon, to do everything in their power to keep expenses as low as possible, and to increase revenue where possible, and also to support these 4 items that the mayor mentioned earlier, which were to keep property tax at or below the rate of inflation, increase revenues, decrease expenses, and increase the fund balance. So I saw that in action on Tuesday, and I couldn't be prouder of our department heads. So thank you for letting me sit in on that and be a participant. I wish I could have done all of them. I think I heard some other good news from the other groups that met as well. That a whole lot of give and take, a whole lot of compromise, and it seems to be going pretty good. So.
Well, thank you for attending. Those aren't easy meetings, as you know. They're pretty difficult, and we're discussing very difficult, often cost-cutting measures at the same time as they have all kinds of ideas of expanding services. We're expanding services and they're cutting costs at the same time, and it's hard, but I really appreciate your point. It is very collegial. They're looking to help both the city taxpayers out and each other out. There's one department that figured out how to cut more, so another department who had a more difficult time cutting could make overall within the group the goals. So this is the first time it's done that way, and I'm incredibly pleased. They're painful meetings, but I'm incredibly pleased about how it allowed us to put together a very collaborative budget that met all your various targets. And at the same time, I should say that they've discussed ways to expand services and police, and as you mentioned, in fire and code enforcement, and as you know, they're building more roads, rebuilding more roads than they ever have, and the DPW is doing an incredible job there. We're modernizing a lot of the services we're doing, and still they're coming up with ways to save money and reduce the overall level of expenditures. Taxpayers have to put in. Our expenditure level next year we expect is going to be lower than in 2017. So it's just remarkable what they've all done together, collaborating. I really, really appreciate it.
I'd also like to mention to the council that now that we will have a budget after tomorrow, I would like to start a series of budget hearings we could do it one of 2 ways. We could do it before each meeting in conjunction with that committee that meets that week, or we could do it immediately after the meeting, whichever you're most comfortable with. And I would like for us to follow that same structure that we use for our committees, the governance strategy and city operations committee, for example. If you're ready next week, let's have your budget hearing next week.
Okay.
If you're not ready, we can push that off till the first week in October.
Start with infrastructure.
Okay, so we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, just to that question, I know that you postponed the community development department's scheduled meeting for Monday, I believe it was, right? Or Tuesday.
They're going to do it in 2 parts, but they did all of it on Wednesday instead. They're going to do one part on
So
Monday.
I was not present for that, so if I could arrange a meeting so that we could go over whatever I missed. I don't think Josh was
Mike,
able
why
to
don't
attend.
we start it the following week with, we could start it with
City infrastructure. That's great, Peter, and I'm glad you're willing to do that. And what I would advise.
Plus it'll give us an additional week or so as a body to go through the proposal.
That's right, you're right. So I would suggest that the committee members meet with your department heads if possible and discuss any concerns they have in the mayor's budget, and be ready to bring those to the table and talk about them when your time comes.
And feel free to use the work session time too as well. You got a lot of
Can I ask, Mayor, do we have permission to speak with the department heads?
Could you do it in consultation with me? We can organize meetings in my office, as we usually do.
Okay, so we'll be in contact with you and you'll help us to organize the meetings with the various department heads. Okay.
Thanks.
So our goal will be to have our budget complete and ready to vote on.
In a month? No.
Well, by mid-October.
Okay.
But let's say mid-October, we'll be ready. Any questions about that or that plan or those ideas? Do you have anything to add or?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I know budget season's really tough because it means long meetings, but we'll try to keep each budget hearing each week to a half an hour. That'll be our goal.
And do take the time you need. I mean, last year, we had a real sense of urgency because we recognized we're in real crisis and trying to, with zero fund balance really left. But if you need more time, take more time. I don't anticipate having to implement any of these things immediately as we felt was necessary last year.
I'd like to give our department heads as much time as possible to prepare for next year. It's not really fair to give them a budget in December and expect them to implement it in January. They need time to think about it. So the sooner we can do it, the better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public safety, Councilor Dowdell?
Really no update since our last meeting, which was last week, but I would comment that I did attend the open house at the police department. That was most enjoyable, excellent participation with the community members and the police department for doing all that. It was quite a day, very educational and fun at the same time. And also, I believe it was at the last meeting you were on your way to the school board meeting. And of course, that's going to be further on the agenda about the resource officers, and we'll probably ask you to comment on that as well.
I'll make myself available.
I'm sure, okay. And not last meeting, but the one before, which would have been 5 weeks before, there was two hot topics. There was the house on Cornelia Street, which I see has undergone several improvements. Then 15 Couch Street, the owner was on the way to city court within the next few weeks. And I'm wondering if we could get a follow-up if that court appearance has occurred and what direction the owner might have been given regarding 15 Couch Street.
I can give that update on 15 Couch Street. I've been working with Joe in the building inspector's office. So he was served with several code violations related to a needed update based on the passage of time to confirm that this remains to be safe, not an unsafe structure or a safe structure, as well as other code violations. At his first appearance, typically as occurs, he asked for an adjournment and raised some procedural points, which the judge knocked down. But the judge did grant the adjournment, so it's returnable again on the 4th, and we'll have further updates at that point. He'll either admit to the allegations or request a hearing at that point. So we don't know yet what he's going to do.
That's September 4th?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. No, that's about it. Thank you.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor Armstrong?
Yes, the library board approved its budget and they requested the same amount of money from the city as last year, which is, I don't have that figure, sorry, $700 and something thousand. There was a little bit of a shock to the system in that there was an increase in the IT budget that was not anticipated, so that they're trying to figure out how to deal with that increase of almost 50%. But I understand from the mayor that that general question as with regard to IT and phone for the city is under consideration, so I'm encouraged by that. Other than that, they said that the mechanized part, the robotics part of the mural on Brinkerhoff was coming along. There were a few snags, but it's proceeding.
Thank you. And any addition to the MLD report, Councilor McFarland?
I give my report. or my update during the work session. Basically, we had our meeting just before the work session, before the council meeting started, and if you missed it, I suggest you watch it on YouTube. It's very exciting.
Resolved, reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by Councilor McFarland. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. No correspondences or recommendations at this time. Please.
Resolved that the bills ordered by the Common Council for the week ending August 31st, 2018 in the amount of $1,094,268.20 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Dowdle. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question. On the weekly expenditure analysis that we were provided, there's several expenses for the Battle of Plattsburgh that's coming up. There's several, I won't name them all, and I think there's one that will probably be forthcoming for the Coburg Band and the hotel rooms. These are all expenses, of course. Where is the revenue to offset these expenses? Because that was part of the agreement, was it not, with the events that they would, I don't want to say self-pay, but I think that was the basis of it.
They'd be sponsored.
Right, that they would all be sponsored. When do we see, I know it comes in and then it gets paid, but is there a way to see, I mean, we're already up to many thousands of dollars, and is that all being offset by revenues or sponsorships?
I have the POs for the hotel and the band, and I think it combined amounts to 15,000 between.
For that?
For the band and the hotel.
And when you add, we have the Glengarry Boys, Lowell Worcester, Crossovers Touring, Essex Fife and Drums, Leaf Fife and Drums, Tom Penn. So when you add all this up, these are the expenses. I'm just wondering where the revenues are coming in to cover all this.
Yeah, the revenue is in the form of sponsorships from local community businesses. I believe to date, somewhere between 50 and 60,000 in donations have been deposited. 55.
Specifically for BOP or for all sponsorship?
For events in general.
I'm sitting on 5 waiting to find out where to put it, so it will be
Yeah.
60.
Okay, so about 60.
Good.
And we estimate by the end of the year that number to be close to 80,000.
Right, but then can we have an accounting as, just to
Right.
follow up, of the total expenditures as they align with those?
Not just for Battle of Plattsburgh, but year to
But
date
for
with all the
everything.
Year to
events.
date, right?
And was there money left when we transitioned events coordinators between the departure, the time period, and the startup?
What do you mean, Dale?
Well, sponsorships had been probably obtained, I think.
I think some of them, if I'm not mistaken, were paid in full, and some of them were in installments.
Right.
I believe that's correct.
And were those maintained? Just to see.
Did
if
we
they were-
lose any sponsors, is what you're
Yes, the
saying?
only sponsor that, we didn't really lose them. They requested their sponsorship be returned because of an unforeseen medical issue with one of the
Okay,
partners in the firm.
right. That was the only one.
That was the only one, yes.
So yes, could we get a breakdown of that? How it's
Yeah, absolutely.
the sponsorships of expenses versus revenues, I guess, is.
Kind of a
Well,
year to
they're
date.
probably-
And even anticipated.
Right, and that shows up in your budget probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. An opportunity for any members of the public to please come and address the council on issues related to the agenda tonight. There will be another public comment period for other issues at the end of the meeting. Please state your name, address, and 5-minute time limit.
We know.
Name's Ira Barville, I live on 62 Club Road in the city, and I suspect you know what I'm here to talk about since I sent an email to every one of you. So I have concerns about putting armed officers in the schools. And I know it's something tangible that schools and school authorities can do. and they're trying to demonstrate to the community that they're making schools safer. However, most schools don't face any serious threat of violence, and armed officers in the schools are not likely to be confronted with little more than boisterous, disrespectful childhood behavior. There's never been a question about whether schools need to be safe. Of course they do. And I recognize that the recent school shootings over the past couple of years are incredibly traumatic, and the resulting fear and concern of every parent with a child in school is amplified by the round-the-clock reporting that continues in our news coverage. But is the hiring of school resource officers the best strategy to improve school safety? And that should be the top question that we're asking ourselves. Good public policy should be driven by sound data, not the collective fears of a community. The research on the use of school resource officers indicates that the benefits are unclear and possibly unknowable. As you all know, many of the schools where these shootings occurred had armed police officers. But at most, the research says that the impact is probably minimal, given how little violent crime takes place at school in the first place. More children in a year are killed walking and getting to and from school than have been killed in the multiple years of mass shootings. It doesn't raise to the level of concern to the community because it's an individual child. And one at a time, 100 kids a year die. Schools are one of the safest places that children can be. As you take this on tonight and make the decision whether armed officers are going to be in the schools, I just respectfully ask for your help in helping the public and me and others who might care about this understand what the threat, what the safety issue is that requires armed officers in our schools today. And as you make that decision, I hope that somehow you can articulate that and that the public will get a better understanding. I was unable to be at the school board meeting when this was discussed. I was fortunately with my granddaughter helping her enroll in Syracuse University. So that was a lot more fun than being at the school board meeting. Thank you very much, and thank you, Chief. Thank you. We had a chance to talk briefly about this before.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ira.
Any additional individuals like to come and please comment?
My name is Rosemary Benton. I live at 162 Oak Street here in the city. I did take the poll online about the straws and the other plastics, but I didn't see any place for my personal comments, so I'm here to make them. In my view, the problem is not necessarily the plastic pollution as much as the recycled plastics. There are limitations on the types of plastics that we can put in the recycling bin in the city, and maybe we need to look at expanding this, and maybe we need to evaluate if the increased costs are weighing in heavier than the outcomes. Personally, I'm looking at it from my use perspective. I want to use a straw. I've always used a straw. And to me, it's a matter of hygiene. I've watched the bar staff and the wait staff, and I don't always want to touch those glasses that they've handled. And not all establishments use a sterilizer. So for me to put my lips on those glasses, not going to happen. Additionally, I travel a lot. And the thought of stopping in a rest area or a gas station type place to get a drink and not having the option of a straw, not really easy when you're in a car. And yeah, I can use a reusable bottle, but you know, I'm 2 hours into a trip and I've still got 2 hours ahead of me, and maybe I want to stop for a coffee or something like that. And I want to have those options open to me. I don't think someone should be dictating that to me. And finally, I'd like the council to keep in mind that there are over 700 people employed by plastics manufacturers in the city and the town. what would those employers think of us banning some of these plastics? And I'd like to be given the option to use the straw or refuse it. I don't think that that is so difficult, because a lot of the younger people I know, they don't care about using straws and they'd say, no, I don't need it. But they fully understand and they accept that I would say, let me use a straw. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Any remaining individuals? Seeing none, let's continue, please.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council authorizes the mayor and police chief to sign an agreement for a term of September 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019 with Plattsburgh City School District to provide 2 school resource officers. The total cost for these 2 positions will be paid by the Plattsburgh City School District.
Moved by Councilor Quester, second by Councilor Ansel. Discussion. I'll just point out pretty quickly that we're not making the decision to place police officers in the school. That decision was made by the school. This discussion is whether we help facilitate it with some of your previously trained individuals.
I would just like to say, as a spouse of a educator, of a teacher, I'm in favor of this idea. I know that we've had some speakers say that they are concerned and what good they would do, and that more children are killed coming to and from school. My answer to that is, if we can save one child's life by having an officer there, it's well worth it.
Councilor Quester?
How does this look as far as like revenue or compensation? Would we be compensated?
Dollar for dollar.
So what does that look like?
The salary cost would be $30,000 per officer, plus additionals for uniform costs, extra costs. And those are all articulated in the contract that will be reimbursed for on a monthly basis.
And are these already enlisted officers?
These will be a civil service position titled Special Patrol Officer. It's a peace officer. And they'll act in the place of a school resource officer.
And would this be from a pool of new candidates or candidates that are currently employed with the police department, or any number of combinations of those things?
It's very specific, the special requirements for this civil service position. It must be a retired law enforcement officer. So we would intend to hire retired Plattsburgh City police officers.
And in your experience, do you know if, say, other than retired police officers, would say, someone who has experience in security or something be eligible?
Yes.
Is this only, do they have to have served as a police officer?
Yes.
In order to, so it couldn't be like a security guard or something?
No, it is very specific, the special requirements. They must be retired municipal police, sheriff's department, state police, corrections, parole, or probation.
Chief, would they also have, besides weaponry, stun guns, or would it not?
Nope.
Would they be armed with guns?
Handguns, yes.
So, yes. To your knowledge, their school districts, do they have such officers?
There is, yes.
Yes, I know. I worked at Beekmantown. A trooper was employed there as a resource officer. So this is, a pretty common practice.
I would think that that's a fair statement.
Right. Now, too, how will they circulate among the schools in the district?
So that's something that we're still in discussion over.
Mm-hmm.
I am certainly going to defer to the superintendent and the building officials, because this is really for them to mold in the way that best serves the school district.
Right.
I will have some input, but largely it's going to be a rotational basis.
Okay. So, but you said there are peace officers, and
Correct.
I remember the role of our resource officer at Beekmantown was really to get to know the kids. Mm-hmm. To be seen as a friend, And
A
you know,
mentor.
a mentor, exactly. And so, I mean, I think that serves an additionally good purpose. I don't think I have any other questions.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I was just going to comment, we've had resource officers in the past, correct?
So the
but of a different job description, if I'm correct in saying that.
Right, we would call him our youth officer, but he acts in every capacity without being actually assigned to a building.
What I would like you to do is, there seems to be a public perception that the officer's there for active shooters, but the role is much more broad than that. They would be there. Could you explain what a resource officer is? I mean, I know they're there to, it's a set of eyes, there's mental health issues that are possibly being observed, there's a lot of detail to this job description.
If you'll indulge me, I'll read from the contract the specific duties of school resource officers, our special patrol officers. Patrol and observe all areas of the school buildings and grounds, be visible and available to the students, faculty, and administration. Keep the peace and help maintain a safe and orderly school community. Develop and maintain positive and open relationships with students, faculty, and parents. Present educational programs to students in conflict resolution, restorative justice, crime awareness, and anger management. Present educational programs to school employees, parents, and school board members. Build relationships by being the liaison between the Plattsburgh Police Department and the school district. Survey the needs of schools and address crime and disorder problems, gang and drug activities affecting or occurring in or around the school district schools. Assist schools with security concerns and identify physical changes in the environment that may reduce crime in and around the school. Develop or expand crime prevention efforts for students. Educate potential school-age victims in crime prevention and safety. Develop or expand community justice initiatives for students. Assist in developing school policy that addresses crime and recommended procedural change where appropriate. Assist schools in meeting requirements mandated by New York State law. Take appropriate law enforcement action with regard to any criminal activities that he or she observes or that are reported directly to him or her. Investigate other emergency situations and summon aid and assistance as needed. District camera monitoring, review and proper placement for coverage. Participate in district safety meetings. Provide security suggestions and training for transportation department bus drivers. Conduct a threat assessment for students prone to violence. Assist school social worker and psychologist with distraught students. And lastly, respond to active shooter events in accordance with Plattsburgh Police Department active shooter response policy.
May I just interject here? It seems like a wonderful job description, and you're in charge of hiring these two individuals.
Yes.
And so I would just encourage you to just pick a wonderful person who will really relate to the kids and be seen as, you know, somebody they can look up to and go to if they need them. But I do need to say that I know there have been cuts to the budget at Plattsburgh High School, and so I'm going to editorialize here. And I just wish that we could get our community members and taxpayers to understand that some of these cuts have affected the services that these students get, counseling services. I don't believe they have a social worker there, but there should be. I know at Beekmantown, we let our social worker go. Those kinds of resources are going to prevent problems before they begin. And I hope that these officers can contribute in a similar way.
That's my hope too.
And I'm thinking there's a training program, because that job spec doesn't necessarily fit where somebody's coming from completely.
No, I mean, that's the natural progression in this, is that we're going to provide an indoctrination, but ultimately we'd like to have some sort of training program.
Because this is pretty statewide. I mean,
There's a National Association of School Resource Officers that provides training.
All right, well, thank you for...
Chief, what does this mean, conduct threat assessments of students prone to violence?
When a staff member or administrator identifies a student that articulates a specific threat, there's a sheet, essentially, a threat assessment that would preclude them from coming on school grounds, or maybe extra measures need to be taken. That's what that means. It's a school protocol.
But they would preclude a student from coming on the school grounds?
If I say I'm going to come to school and shoot at the school, we're going to take some action, and there's a threat assessment, so certain questions are asked, how was it communicated? Was it communicated over social media? Was it in person? Who heard it? Those kind of things.
Well, such a threat would be investigated by the police anyways, though, right?
If we're talking about someone who's 13 years old, we would have a hand in that, obviously, but it impacts the school more than it does the events that we would investigate.
And what are, I see here, present educational programs to school employees, parents, and school board members. What would some of those educational programs be?
Generalizing awareness programs, how to be safe in the community, how to avoiding bullying.
Did you mention a national association of resource officers or something? They probably have tools that you're able to pull from.
Oh, absolutely.
So it'll be kind of best practices of what's being done.
Yes.
And under the direction of the school superintendent.
Now, the mayor said at the beginning of this discussion that the school board has already voted to have resource officers, that this discussion is to establish whether those resource officers would be city police officers employed by the city, is that correct?
This resolution is to authorize us to sign the agreement. Their resolution, they resolve to sign the agreement as well. So the contract that you have in front of you has space for 3 signatures: the superintendent of schools, the mayor of Plattsburgh, and the chief of police.
So if the city or if the council was to vote down the resolution, what would happen?
There would be no school resource officers.
Question, would they be able to pull from, say, Saranac or Beekman Town or the town of Plattsburgh, from retired sheriffs or police officers from those municipalities to serve that purpose within the school?
No.
Why?
There's a cost difference.
Okay. I didn't hear you mention benefits.
There
Benefits
would
and
be no
retirement.
benefits.
No,
There
okay,
would be
so that's why it's
contractual
retired.
benefits.
Right,
They are retired city
right. Gotcha.
Employees, so.
I'm up to speed now. Thanks.
So just in regards to that last question, the school district in whatever municipality it may fall in is only able to get retired officers from that municipality to serve?
No, they could. However, I can tell you that the cost outside of the city of Plattsburgh
would be different.
Is very different. So that was part of why, when the superintendent came to us to ask if this was feasible, it was also feasible asking for a reasonable and fair price, which we were able to deliver to them.
I guess so just so if for some reason we were to say no and vote no, then the school district could go to other municipalities to ask to see if they would fill in those services.
And I can tell you that they would not, so.
But they could. It's permissible.
Oh yeah.
That was my question.
Sure.
Is it permissible for any retired sheriff, police, whatever, to fill in these roles,
yes.
regardless of where they live or where they've served?
Right.
Okay.
And also say, for the record, I think it would have been helpful to have someone from the Plattsburgh School District here to answer some of the questions as well.
But I just want to respond to the public comment we got from Mr. Barbell, which I appreciate that perspective, because I know there's a lot of concern about the notion of arming teachers. That's an idea that's surfacing in response to the terrible challenge we're facing to keep our schools safe from shooters. But I don't see, just because of my own experience of having had a resource officer in my school, I don't see that they're analogous types of positions or remedies. So I think it's a much more comprehensive idea, program, and I don't believe that the value is strictly to protect from a mass shooter.
Right.
It's the value comes
It's simply
from
one
the relationship
job duty on a very large.
That's right.
And I've heard tremendous things about the officer that works now with the schools.
And he is really going to be the lead for giving an indoctrination to these new officers that, to be the person that introduces them to every school principal and every assistant principal, and to establish those relationships so they can do their jobs effectively.
Now, is he still going to be on the city police payroll after these resource officers are in place?
So his job duties will not change at all. He is
Okay.
going to continue to do the same thing that he does. He's our youth officer, so he's mired in the raise the age stuff right now. He's at a conference that you all approved to get him up to speed with those things. But he does work very closely with the school buildings. He's excellent at it.
One of the things I've always admired about the Plattsburgh Police Department is that it hasn't followed the trends. And the trends are pretty grim. The trends are that city police departments seem to be becoming more militarized as time goes by. You know, you see officers on the streets with body armor and that sort of thing. And I don't think we do that routinely anyway. And I've always had the impression that things like racial profiling, another trend that's taking place, it seems like, in police departments around the country, isn't happening here. At least that's my impression, and I hope you can bear that up, because that's a pretty important thing
It's very important to me
to
as well.
avoid. And Chief Ritter, I believe that we have found the best possible candidate in hiring you as our police chief. I have a lot of faith in you. I really do. But I wonder if, just say hypothetically, the school board decided not to do this, what would happen? What would happen in the city schools if we didn't have these resource officers? If they hadn't decided, the school board hadn't decided to employ these two people?
It would be hard for me to answer that. What I would think that there would be a constant discussion of, are we doing enough?
I'm going to vote no for this because philosophically I don't agree with it. I don't think that putting additional police officers in schools is going to decrease violence at all. I don't think it's necessarily going to increase violence either. But, and I also wonder about the financial ramifications. The school board really can't afford this. And it's not our job to monitor their spending habits, but it is our job to be concerned about our taxpayers. And if you combine the school taxation and our taxation and the county sales tax, we have one of the highest tax rates for income in the state. So our people are way overtaxed. And here's another example of, yeah, this is a great thing to do, but can we really afford to do this? And I say no. I'd like to see, and again, it's a done deal. We can't turn it around, but I'd like to see the school board be a little more cautious in their habits, spending habits, and I don't think that this is a good use of the resources. Like Councilor Armstrong said before, that the money might be better spent for school counselors or social workers or other types of interventionists. So
those are more expensive.
They sure are.
They are. But yeah, again, I'm just not real sure that this is the best solution for the school district or the people who pay the taxes. So that's it.
What was the school board meeting like? Was it a heated debate? Was it like almost unanimous? No.
And they well publicized it. Although I think some accuse them of not doing such a job, that they used at least 5 different media outlets to publicize their intention. And having been a school board member for about 12 years myself, I was on the board when they put their first camera up in the high school. And there was outrage amongst students, among parents, that they didn't need a camera, Big Brother was watching, and now look where they are. You would probably suggest you couldn't get enough cameras in there. And also—
Doors are locked.
Right, and the difference between, and I didn't always agree with this, although I did at times, that the obligation of a school district and a school board and school taxes is to serve the students, not to serve the taxpayers. We are here to serve the citizens with taxes. So they would approach their budget a bit different than we approach ours. That their obligation was first to serve the students, not at any cost, but at maybe what it takes. So.
No, I wanted to ask just one question on liability. I see under section 16 of the contract, the city would be liable for any acts of these resource officers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, this is your deliberations. I obviously don't vote unless it's the case of a tie, but what I do appreciate is that the school district came to our city police and asked for their expertise in this. And I think the chief did correctly allude to the fact that they could have looked elsewhere, but at a significantly higher cost. The chief is merely facilitating a decision that the school district's already made. And I'm very grateful that we can choose to draw from some of our recently retired police officers to fulfill this role. And knowing a couple of the individuals that Chief Ritter's looking at to fulfill this role, I'm even more assured that the school district, if they've made this decision to go in this direction, that they've got the best possible people doing it, highly skilled people that really care about the students there too. So to me, I'm grateful in our role as helping the school district facilitate it, and we can obviously differ. We're all concerned about taxes, and I'm a taxpayer myself, and that's a very legitimate concern, certainly. But our role is primarily to see if we can ensure that the decision they've made is put in place in the most affordable manner with the most highly trained and compassionate individuals, and I've been assured of that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
No.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Passes with 4 votes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council authorizes the execution of the DEC order on consent case R5-20150727-2174 and fulfillment of the DEC requirements.
Moved by Councilor Bartlett, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Thank you, Department Head Rupp, for facilitating that for us. I think it was a very good solution.
Whereas the city of Plattsburgh is the fee owner of a city street
Motion to
identified as
waive
the
reading and
Macomb
move
Street
to
extension.
resolution.
Moved by Councilor McFarland,
Second.
second by Councilor Armstrong. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion of the item itself. Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves MLD to write off unpaid final bills from July 2017 in the total amount of $4,974.76.
I'd like to make a motion to to waive the readings of D, E, F, and G, and move them all together.
And H, I think, was also
And H,
considered by
please.
that committee.
Yes.
G.
The contract.
And H, yes.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor Ensel. All in favor of waiver?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the items D through H.
And these also were all passed unanimously through committee.
I just have a question, but sort of about a point of order. The Platts Municipal Lighting Department board is made up of us, and we govern the MLD's activities. So I wonder, why do we need to vote on this in the regular council meeting? Isn't voting on this in the MLD meeting sufficient?
It is silly, I see your point, but this is the public meeting at 5:30 where the public's invited, so this is the time we've noticed this agenda when everyone can attend. So someone may not have made the MLD meeting, but they may make this meeting, may want that opportunity to comment.
Okay.
Also, the public law that created MLD said anything involving personnel or financial would be approved by the common council.
Okay.
Not just the board of directors.
No.
There you go.
It has to be, common council has to wear the
That's
common
right.
council hats.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
No travel requests at this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration?
Yes, I have a resolution for initial consideration. It reads, resolved, in accordance with the request therefore, the Common Council authorizes the mayor to sign an agreement to transfer property and provide easement and a utility easement with Lakeside Container Corporation, which involves the property identified as tax map numbers 233.5-78 and 233.6-1-6.1.
Let's make a motion to implement Rule 4.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor Ensel, or pardon, Councilor Dowdle. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the item? Seeing none, roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Any other items for initial consideration? Seeing none, any new business or additional council reports? Councilor Dowdle, pardon.
Can I just have a point of clarification? In our upcoming meetings with the department heads about budget issues, since you request that we be in your presence, do you want us to do them individually or like public safety committee department heads, the three of them and me, or, because that would mean one, two,
I'd
three.
recommend that the consolidated group approach for our budget discussions this week actually worked pretty well. So if you could find a time where your two committee members could meet at the same time as the 3 or 4 department heads, I think that'd be ideal.
As well as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you would like, we could do that during the budget hearings. If that would be more convenient, I don't see why we couldn't have that discussion in public.
Maybe we could opt for both, if.
Whatever works.
Okay.
Leave it up to the individual
Yeah.
heads of the committees to decide how they want to do it.
Okay. All right. So we can just be a group effort. All right.
And where's this
Do we
past
have
Saturday?
the right to ask the individual departments how they would like to handle that? And, I mean, if we need to correspond via email or whatever, that we can ask them what their wish would be, how they would rather do it, either within individual meetings or within the budget
You should convene
meeting.
that through me, but whereas the meetings over the previous week were really designed around the department head schedules with you all, some of you invited to attend. This is the reverse. This is more at your convenience, and so we're going to try and design around your schedules and find out times when they can attend. But I think your goal would probably be to have as many, if not all, of the department heads attending. But yours is going to be the constraint. But I ask you to convene that through me or through Beth to help. Beth can help you convene all those. Councilor Armstrong?
Yes, I would just like to thank the personnel involved in helping to put the Survey Monkey on the website. That would be Ms. Carlin, thank you very much, and Tara Powers, who put it up on the Facebook page. And I'd like to also thank the citizen who came forward to register your your feelings about it, and I appreciate the manner in which you did it. I have to say, yesterday, I looked at the comments on the Facebook page, and it took a lot of self-restraint to maintain my equilibrium, because they were very disrespectful, many of them, most of them. And I would just like to make a public statement requesting that everyone discuss this matter civilly in all forums, that disagreement is absolutely encouraged, no problem with that at all. We can arrive at solutions by having disagreements, but especially in the culture of Facebook, there is a tendency to really demonize one's opponent, and I find that to be so unfortunate, because we're all part of the solution if we choose to be.
And I'll bring up that on a completely different topic. I've had a number of constituents reach out to me in the past week regarding traffic issues. One gentleman contacted me that he was perturbed by the fast rate of speed that people were coming off of the 374-22 corridor onto North Catherine Street. His proposal would be to put a stop sign on North Catherine Street at Riley Avenue. We had some others state concerns regarding the intersection coming from Court onto Margaret Street, which I can personally vouch for is pretty it's a pretty nerve-wracking intersection. You're kind of leading out blind. I also made the comment that the same intersection or the same problem occurs at the intersection of Court and City Hall Place, especially around the time that work is getting out. Those are very hectic intersections. That constituent proposed putting a stop sign on Margaret Street at Court Street. I know the mayor brought up, because I had previously included him in these discussions as well, that that perhaps that might be alleviated if you know, parking changes go forward on Court Street. But that issue was brought up. Two women discussed with me this morning a problem that actually Peter mentioned recently on that intersection of Broad and Cornelia. They didn't mention the cones or this manhole, or I haven't been up there in a while. I avoid that area as much as I can. But that's just a problem intersection. And the other one that I'll bring up that I've actually brought up to the mayor and Peter when I was asked to be on the planning board was the inconvenience of the one-way streets we have in Plattsburgh, namely Court Street west of Oak Street and Brinkerhoff west of Oak Street, and I bring that up because I personally hate them.
Would you be in favor of having those go back to two-way street?
Absolutely.
Me too, Patrick. I brought that up a couple years ago. We should talk about that.
We should definitely talk about all these issues.
Do you know why those were done? I think the reason they were done is because back when they built the interstate, they needed feeder roads. So they needed a fast way to get into the city in the morning. They needed a fast way to get out of the city in the afternoon. And we're still living under that model.
And I think that makes sense with Oak Street and North Catherine Street as a fast way to the north-south avenues, but I don't think they make much sense for Court Street and Brinkerhoff Street. Now, Peter brought up a great point when I brought it up personally, is that maybe that we'd lose parking in the winter on one side, and that's certainly a concern. But I do think those would be discussed. My office is in between Court Street or Oak Street and North Catherine Street on Oak Street, and every time I pull up on North Catherine Street in Court, I'm looking down there and think about just going the wrong way if no one's coming.
Those feeder roads made sense when everything was being built along the interstate, but in the future, the center of our region is going to be right here. It's going to be downtown. So I'd like to see us go back to two-way streets.
And I've noticed that the lights actually still face both ways on Court Street.
Do they really?
Yeah, or at least one does. So just some thoughts to mull over, and maybe we can discuss them more in the future and maybe make some changes if the council does deem them necessary, and perhaps we can have some discussions on those going forward.
One discussion we have had in the past is stop signs cannot be used to slow traffic. So if they're looking, federal funding goes right out the window if you do so. Because there's a couple in town that were installed to slow traffic, and some have been removed. So to slow traffic, you cannot use stop signs.
I imagine that last one on Saley Avenue was put in for such a
Right,
reason.
exactly.
Yes,
I
and one was
remember
taken
the
off
person
Cumberland
recommended
Avenue.
it.
That was put there.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily agree with all the proposals made by constituents,
right.
but I
just-
certainly felt obligated to bring them to the council's attention.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other further new business or council reports? Seeing none, this is a final opportunity for the public to please come address the council on any issue of mutual concern.
First, I just would like to thank you for listening. I don't usually tilt at windmills, and I knew this was one.
Thank you for speaking.
But I felt strongly enough about my own personal feelings about this that I felt I had to stand up and say something about it. So I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate the chief. He and I had a conversation before the meeting talking about this as well. And I think we're fortunate with the police department that we have in the city of Plattsburgh. I think that if you have to have this in some place, I think we have a good chief and we've got good people on our police force here. I'll just share a couple of comments that ticked me off when I started looking into this. One is, first of all, there are only 20% of the schools in the United States that have a school resource officer. So it's not a majority. And we can thank Barack Obama for putting this in motion by creating federal funds to fund police in the school districts. That's how this all came about. But secondly, the school resource officers have a national association, and I don't know if the chief has had much to do with that, but when I first looked at the National School Resource Officers Association, I saw a picture on the front of it that was on the T-shirt of the president of the National School Resources Officer. Had a picture, it says, of a child behind bars, and the heading was, "You raise them, we cage them." That said a whole hell of a lot to me about some of the mentality of the individuals that are coming into the schools. And that's why I wanted to get up here and say something, because I don't think that's the mentality of the officers that are here in the city of Plattsburgh, and they're not going to be going in there to kind of do that. But, as part of the data, I would hope the police chief would look at how many arrests have been made of people in the school district. And when we put peace officers in there, are we seeing that climb? And incidents that may have been handled by the school are now being referred to police for criminal charges. But anyway, again, thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Dowd and second by Councilor McFarland. Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Thank you, folks. Thank you all for coming and participating.
Yes.
Iris thing. And I honestly am a little concerned.
Long meeting, but a lot of, I got a bunch of stuff to sign too, don't I?
Yeah, I do agree with what Iris stated then and what Mike said, that luckily our local police are great. And I do think that they'll do a good job, and on the national level, I'm very concerned about this whole thing of police officers in school. But
Hi, good, how are you?
that's kind of the reason so I really issue concerns me with placing people with guns even at the school between the something goes wrong, I think we face serious
Well, I just know that this officer was widely known. He worked closely with students and with staff. He was a presence, and it was a positive. He knew students. He saw them as kids, not as clients, I guess you would say. I think he had the same kind of disposition toward kids that anybody who was in the education would have, understanding, compassionate way. So I didn't perceive him as anyone who was there to maintain law and order at all. He wasn't there on the lookout for problems. He was there to help build a positive environment for kids. Well, we